It's amazing. They just keep flowing in. Here's another telegram. Thanks for being in the West Suburban for all those years. You helped our program and our record tremendously. Paul Franzen, Downers Grove North. These men respect you. At this time, I'd like to introduce John Burley.
Connie, thank you. I forgot everything I was going to say. Was it Connie that was just up here? Okay. I received my invitation by mistake. I believe one of the criterion that you had to meet was graduating as a team member. Well, Don, in a big moment in my life, ended my baseball career shortly before graduation, along with a group of 13 cohorts, and we really thought that our graduation was going to coincide with Don's retirement, but he chose to continue for another 25 years, and a few of my former almost teammates that almost finished their senior years on the team are scattered about, but we during my Glen Ellen baseball career, we really saw the highs and the lows, and I'm up here to represent that other end. I'd like to point out. I realized when I got this invitation, I sat back and I originally went through this terrific high. I said, boy, I can come back and I can see John Hermanack, and I can see Tommy Wingeter, and I can see Dick Watkins, who only lived 2 miles away from me, but I haven't seen him for 20 years. But then I realized we're spanning such a broad era, such a wide era, that so many of you in here don't know what transpired back in those early days. And I'd like to start out just by pointing out a few of those guys. There's a table right back here of, well, let me ask, before I point you guys out. Don dedicated 30-plus years of his life to baseball and producing talent. And I'd like to see the results of that. How many guys in this room played in the big leagues? Please raise your hand. I'm sorry, I couldn't get my glasses out, but you're scattered. But we really did. We had some just incredible talent that Don somehow managed to quell over the many years. But I'd like to point out a few of these guys. These are literally, when I saw the film Lucas, which everybody in this room I'm sure has seen, and I saw Lucas climbing over those railroad tracks behind Memorial and looking up the hill, I thought back to the days when I think Tommy Wingeter hit, what'd you hit, 475 your senior year? I mean, this guy was just, right then, one of the finest. Tommy, would you like to stand up and be recognized by all those who came after you who don't know who you are? Tommy Wingeter, right here. Sitting right next to him, Ken, don't get nervous. I'm not going to talk about you, Mr. Ken Bush was a terrific ball player. But a guy who went on to great things is sitting to Tom's left. Dick Watkins went on to lead the nation in pitching his, sophomore, junior year at the University of Denver with 16-1, 17-1 record. Just an incredible ball player. Dick? There he is. By the way, Don gets none of the credit for those two. And John, oh, there you are. Back here is, I hate to say, in my era, and that spanned 10 years before me and 10 years after, there was no comparable to John Hermanack. And Don can, I hope you're going to get up here later so we can all throw some at me. But I hope you'll go into John Hermanack's record. It was just incredible what he did while he lived in Glen Ellen. By the way, none of this is what I had written down. I was going to tell, okay, I got my invitation. They sent this by mistake. And I couldn't sleep that night. I went on for hours, and I said I could tell Don Burns stories until I'm 55 years old. That's only a couple weeks away. But I thought back, and I tried to come up with a couple of my best. And Don and I had a very special relationship. It was kind of father-son. We didn't communicate at all. This was, I didn't know the man could smile. Somebody told me that Don, a few years ago, had a problem with a little paralysis, and I said I thought he hadn't been born with that. I looked at me as well, oh, geez, Burley, you. Anyway, I was having a real problem. I used to pitch, and I said I've had enough of this. I never want to pitch again. So I said I'm gonna spend my time in the outfield or somewhere else. We were playing Lyons Township, my junior in high school, and the team had a chance to do well that year. It was early in the season because, believe me, by the end, we were way out of it. But at this point in time, the highlight of the season would have been a split of this doubleheader. The first game we got beat. It was untold sums, 14-1, 16-1, and we gone through 9 pitchers. Second game, we're behind 15-1, and we'd gone through the entire order. Don looks out at me in center field. He's going, and I turned my back and I kind of scratched around. I said, I'm not coming in. And I looked up and he's still standing. I was the only guy left. I even think Ralph Scrovier had thrown a few pitches. So anyway, Don called me into the mound, and I said, okay. I begrudgingly walked into the mound. And I hope you remember this story, Don, but we were, Harry Bowen was at the bat, believe me, that was the guy's name, and a few of you in that era will remember. Harry led the state in hitting the year before, hitting about what Tommy Wingeter had a few years before. Harry was about 6'3", weighed about 110 pounds, one of the homeliest individuals ever, but boy, could he hit the ball. And so I came in and I'm taking my warm-up pitches, and Don's sitting there saying, he can't hit a high outside fastball. He can't hit an outside fastball. I said, boy, that's not the same Harry I remember, but okay. So anyway, I took my 4 or 5 warm-up pitches. Don heads back to the dugout, stepped up, I looked up, looked at Ralph, my catcher. Ralph's got the high outside fastball. The best, I usually didn't hit the spot. I mean, I hit the spot and proceeded to watch the longest home run ever hit. Do you remember that building out in center field in Memorial Park? I forget what they called that thing. But Joe Zaluba, who'd gone into center field for me, still hadn't gotten the ball when Harry was crossing home plate. Had gone to the bench and was getting a drink of water. It came this close. And so that was my comment about how well Don knew the game. Right? He knew the game inside out. One other story that flashed in my mind, Denver, Colorado, where I lived for over 20 years, was proliferated with people from Glen Ellen because of Don's link to the University of Denver. And a number of years ago, I got a call from Bill Patterson, Dick Watkins, and they said, Don's traveling team is coming to Denver. I mean, we were growing up, if we went to, Geneva, it was a big trip, but they ventured all the way to Denver. So we went over and we walked up behind the dugout. We're watching the game. It was a real tight game. They were playing the Denver, Colorado All-Star team. And looked up, and the Glen Ellen team was a run or two behind, and Don's pacing around the dugout. He stops, he walks out to the mound, he brings in the second baseman to pitch. And this kid was good. I understand, but we watched him, he struck out, retired the came back in, went out the next inning, struck out 3 batters, walked back in the dugout. I walked up to Don, I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, that guy is really something. And Don looked at me, this is a high school tournament, he looked at me and he said, He's my assistant coach. The kid's a junior at Michigan State. You know? That's my Don Burns spirit of winning story, right? Whatever it takes to get the job done. Finally, I'd like to comment on Don's disciplinary techniques. I already told you that we finished our senior year with no seniors left on the team. I mean, we had a little poker party and a couple beers, and we were all off the team. But there were a couple guys on that team that really benefited by Don's discipline. One was Ed McDara, the infamous rat, who this is a terrible story, actually. Ed took Don's discipline to heart, gave up baseball, and the next year, when he would have been somewhere in right field, he actually, instead of throwing baseballs, was throwing knives, ended up killing his mother-in-law, and spent the rest of his life in prison. And that is, I'm sorry to say, a true story. There's the other side of that extreme, and I wish this individual had been here tonight. At my 20th year reunion, I ran across our #1 relief pitcher, Denny Mandel. And Denny had more junk than, I mean, he could throw every pitch that was ever invented, but except for a fastball. But after high school, he grew from 5'8" to 6'4". I mean, we walked into the reunion, and here's Denny. I mean, oh, Jesus. Well, it turns out Denny had an outstanding college career, but he ended his senior year just like Ralph and Rocky and the rest of us, not on the baseball team. This is a true story, okay? And Denny, I think, came over to tell Don this story. Denny got kicked off the baseball team his senior year, along with another fellow, Bruce Spank. And Bruce, in his case, turned out to be a minister, so Donnie did well in that case. Denny had gone out one night and had a drink, had a couple drinks. Don heard about it, confronted him. Denny said, I had a couple drinks. Don said, you're off the ball club. To this day, that's the last drink he had. Okay? Don, that had the impression of a lifetime. He went on to a terrific college baseball career, and I'll tell you, I can say that personally, the man that's had as much of an impression on me as anybody that I've ever dealt with, it's Don Burns. And I thank you, Don.
You have to realize that Don must have taught that one guy at least something, because he had good control when he threw those knives. Wanted a high inside fastball. I can't believe it, but another telegram. Thanks for keeping cynicism and sarcasm alive for all these years, Archie Bunker. I don't know if you people ever realized that Don had a player years ago that made it to the big leagues. His name was Mel Famey. And this guy wasn't, oh come on, let me tell the whole story, will you? Mel Famey was a player of Don's back in the 50s and made it to the bigs, and he was a relief pitcher. He's sitting down in the bullpen, and they're up by like 6-0, ninth inning. And all game long, Mel was drinking beers. I mean, he's drinking beers in the bullpen like crazy. Figures, hey, it's a shoo-in. We were winning 6-0. We're going to win this thing. So they kind of fight back, the opposing team, and they E12, by the way. We dropped it. Kind of sitting back, and he's having 5, 6, 7, 8 beers, and 6-1, and then 6-2, 6-3, 6-4. 6-5, and all of a sudden the coach calls Mel Famey to come in. Hey, you got a pitch? Well, he goes out there and pitches. He gets on the mound, throws his warm-up pitches, and he walks the first game, and he walks the second game, and he walks the third game. So now bases are jammed. They're down. They're still up by 2 runs. Mel Famey walks the next guy. So now it's a tie. Sorry, they're down by 1. He walks the next guy. It's a tie ball game. And finally goes to 3 and 2. And Mel Famey throws the 4th ball and walks in the winning run. And as the fans are streaming by the bullpen, they look down and they see 25 beer cans. And they said, it's the beer that made Mel Famey walk us. At this time, I told you it wouldn't work, Witkowski. At this time, I'd like to call Greg Mathews up to the speaker stand.
It's been a long time since Witkowski was up here. Would you rather me trade in my 5-minute allotment of nice things about you to make a pit stop, Coach? Or can you make it? All right. Marge Burns and Nancy Elliott called me up a couple of weeks ago. So they thought that I should say something about Don Burns tonight. I thought twice about that. It made me a little bit nervous to talk to a big crowd of people who know Don Burns. They said, well, you know, you're a lawyer. You're supposed to be able to talk. You're supposed to be able to lay on a nice, long argument. But the difference between a crowd of Don Burns people and a jury in a jury box is when the jury gets up to leave, the judge has them arrested. They have to listen to me. So still, I thought, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but Burns said, look, I'll pay you a retainer if you get up and you say something nice about me. So here I am. And I got 5 minutes, and I'm starting now. I guess we're here to honor a person who we believe is a great coach. And in order to say something nice about Coach Burns, it's my nature to look to evidence before I make a comment on what a person is like. And I thought for a few days, and I really couldn't think of any reasons to say Don Burns was a great coach. So I went back to some newspaper clippings and my yearbook. And I found out when I was a senior back in 1973, our team ended up in 3rd place, which I was a little bit surprised at. I didn't think we were that close to the top. And as a matter of fact, I also found out that year, we were 2 or 3 games out of 1st place. And looking a little bit further at the press clippings, I found out some maybe news that wasn't so good. We lost seven games that year by 1 run, and we lost 5 games that year in extra innings. And I thought, geez, with a group of guys that was as talented as the guys that we had, it must have been the coaching. So I was thinking, you know, who were the seniors on our team? There's a few guys on our team that were seniors. The first one would be Jeff Roberts, who I don't think is here tonight. Jeff was a pitcher. He was 6'3", 6'4" to me. He looked about 6'8". He had a real good fastball, real good curve. He was the MVP of the team. But there was one problem, and Burns didn't figure this out, and a real good coach would have. Jeff Burns should have pitched every game that we played that year. And if that had been a possibility, we might have won that championship. And all he really had to do was schedule the games so Jeff could pitch every game, or maybe break out the Farmer's Almanac and schedule the games when he wasn't going to pitch as a rain day. That would have been simple. A good coach would have done that. Guy Burns was another guy that was on our team. He was a senior. He was a first baseman. He was a catcher. Today he's a missionary, and I understand. I haven't heard him speak. He's a minister. He's a very good one. Now, Guy couldn't hit that good when he was in high school. And you would think that a good coach would have recognized what Guy Burns' calling was, and would have suggested to Guy, hey, you know, let's bring a little divine intervention into this, and let's get some hits. That could have been worth, you would think divine intervention would be worth at least one game. Another guy on the team, Mark Broman, he's sitting over there. He was a first baseman. I tell you what, he caught more wild throws that I threw from second base than anybody I can imagine. I thank him for that. Mark had a little bit of trouble making contact with the ball when he was hit. And it was a slight problem. You know, a good coach, one game, if Mark had a bat about the size of a Fred Flintstone bat, he would have made some contact on a ball, but it would have been worth one game anyway. I was a second baseman. I hit kind of very little. I fielded a little bit, but as Burns will tell you, I was slow. I was slow enough that Burns said that he called me web legs when I ran. If Don Burns had just suggested to me that instead of spikes I wear roller skates and he'd give me a push, I could have made it from first to home on a triple. It could have happened. The last guy, Steve Garwood, is here, and he was a third baseman. Steve Garwood was the only guy on our team who had home run power. He didn't use it much, but he did have home run power. Steve knew how to play the game. He needed one thing, though. He needed a really big glove. In deference to Coach Burns, they didn't make a glove big enough for Steve to be able to field his position. But if the coach had thought about one thing, sometimes coaching is a matter of pride. And there was one game when Steve was playing third base, and he took a throw from first base. I think Broman was playing at first base, and the throw came in. It was about chest high, and it was right on line. Steve's glove wasn't big enough, but luckily, Steve's mom was a very great fan of the team, and she always sat by her son behind third base. Steve was never taught, get your body in front of the ball. But Steve's mom, even sitting in a lawn chair, got her body right in front of that ball and saved the run. If Coach Burns had only not let his pride get in his way and said, Tony, I want you to coach Steve on how to play third base, we might have won that one extra game. Well, this was the evidence that I was looking at, and I was trying to decide whether Coach was a good coach or a bad coach. And I looked further at the standings, and I found out we were just as close to last place as we were to first place. So then I got to thinking maybe he was a pretty good coach. And the truth is, Matt Burke, who was a coach of mine, notwithstanding, Don Burns knows more about baseball than anybody I ever played for. He taught me more about baseball than anybody I know. I'm glad to say that over the years, him and Marge have become my friend, and they have been with me in times when I needed some help, and I really do appreciate that. I hope you don't forget us when you go up to the North Woods, because I'd sure like to come up there again. You don't have to invite the Garwoods, for the sake of the snowmobiles anyway. And I do wish the two of you the best in your retirement, and especially to Marge, because she obviously deserves a good retirement.